All right, welcome back. Coronavirus has killed more than 200,000 people around the world. And this weekend, we're closing in on 1 million infections in the United States. And as states begin reopening and new research emerges, there are new questions about the virus and its impact on our daily lives. And many of you have posted questions on our website. And right now, our panel of experts will answer some of them. We've been doing this for about 4 weekends now. It's been hugely popular, and I think it's been helpful for a lot of viewers and a lot of us here working as well. So I'm joined now by Dr. Daria Long, emergency room physician and clinical assistant professor at the University of Tennessee, Wendy Walsh, psychologist and adjunct professor at California State University, Channel Islands, and Shan Wu, a former federal prosecutor and CNN legal analyst. Good to see all of you.
Hi. Good to see you, Fred.
All right, I'm glad you're all well enough to be with us. Excellent. All right, so Dr. Long, you first. A viewer writes, gyms and salons reopened in Georgia yesterday. Is it safe for me to go to them? Is there anything I should be doing differently?
This is a question as a fellow resident of the state of Georgia. I am being asked, I am asking myself. And I think to answer that question, we have to back up, because we have to look at the CDC guidelines and the White House guidelines. And they said that essentially before you start reopening, before we start this phase 1 of reopening, you need to see 2 things. You need to see a decline of 14 days of cases, and you need to see your hospitals not operating in crisis mode. We're not there yet in the state of Georgia. So that's the first step. So I say until we reach that first stage, we shouldn't be, even as individuals, may elect not to go back to these different businesses. Once we do reach that point, because we hopefully will reach that point, then I think it really depends on the specific business. What are the different metrics that they are doing to stay clean? Are they allowing only a certain number of people in at a time? Is a salon having people wait in their car as opposed to the waiting room? How do they clean up after between each individual? Those will make the difference between businesses that we go to first more smartly versus we may need to stay away from for a little bit longer.
And so those are some of the questions they can ask themselves now, because there are some businesses and they do have some customers right now who are going, and that perhaps answers the what should I be doing differently for those who are taking advantage of the fact that some have reopened. So Wendy, Susan writes, my husband and I both work from home and we're seeing a lot of each other in our small apartment. How can we keep our distance and avoid conflict?
Well, you know, distance is 2 things, right, Fredricka? It's physical distance and it's also emotional distance. Remember that emotions are running high, and we should not judge our partner based on their coping strategies during this kind of stress. Everybody has a kind of neurochemistry. They're wired to respond in a certain kind of way. So don't go into that thinking of, I'm going to leave this person because they can't endure during stress. Instead, focus on forgiveness, 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 and ask yourself every day what you can do to catch them being good, and verbalize that, because you got to water what you want to grow, right? Not the weeds. So try to bite your tongue as far as the criticism. And when you compliment your partner, you're also reminding your own brain of why you fell in love with that person, why you're there. Now, physical things, physical distance, you just got to talk about. Even in small apartments, this is your corner, this is my corner during these hours. Let's make a game strategy for this team. I always say with relationships, whenever there's conflict, if the relationship wins, then you got to win.
Oh, all right. Accentuate the positive. All right, Shan, Ashley wants to know, can companies force employees back to work? What rights do employees have if they fear getting sick?
Basically, the answer is yes, but there are some important exceptions. So, for example, if you, the employee, have any kind of an underlying health concern that may make you more vulnerable to getting sick, then you may be able to talk to your manager and talk to the employer about being exempted, particularly if you already have a recognized disability under the ADA, the American with Disabilities Act. Then they would need to accommodate you just as they normally would.
All right, during these difficult times, CNN is dedicated to helping you and your family understand and cope with this pandemic. And right now, our panel is here answering your questions. Let's welcome back Dr. Daria Long, psychologist, Wendy Walsh, and CNN legal analyst Shan Wu. All right, so Dr. Long, here you go. If my child breaks a bone, is it safe to visit the emergency room during this outbreak?
Fredricka, and to the person who wrote this, yes, yes, yes. If your child breaks a bone, go to the emergency room. But this speaks to a bigger point. I was in the emergency department working a shift last night, and we are seeing many people who are too scared because of COVID to come to the emergency department, and they are truly delaying care. I was talking to some cardiologists. We're seeing less heart attacks, and then when people do come in, they are so late in the game that their heart damage is irreversible. People coming in later with strokes. I had one patient say she didn't want to come in because she didn't want to take a bed from a patient who may have COVID and may need it. So bottom line, if there's something that would cause you to come to the emergency department before COVID, it should cause you to come now. We're taking many steps to keep people separated, keep them safe, keep everyone safe. Please do not delay care. Your life depends on it.
Yeah. All right. Shan, a viewer asks, will my family be able to travel to America under President Trump's immigration ban? Will I be able to get a green card?
That's a complex question. I know it has affected a lot of people. President Trump has instituted this, what he calls a pause on the green cards. A lot of exceptions to that. American citizens, as distinguished from green card holders or lawful permanent residents, they can still petition to bring in their immediate family members. But Americans who are lawful permanent residents, not yet citizens, there is going to be a pause on them being able to bring in the family members. And that's going to affect a lot of people because a very large majority of the green card applications do come from this family preference. So for now, there is definitely a pause on that. There's still some other exceptions. People who are already here and working, and they are applying, there's no pause on that. So if you're already here and working, that's fine. The people that are really going to be affected by this are going to be folks who are not here yet, and the family members trying to bring them in are not yet American citizens.
Okay. And Wendy, John writes, is there an appropriate and effective way of dating while social distancing?
Well, you know, dating apps have seen a big rise in traffic because humans are wired to bond. We need social connection. And for many people who are alone in apartments, this is sort of an emotional crutch, if you will. But the answer is, can this kind of online virtual relationship grow into a real world relationship later? And it really depends on how you navigate it. If you're using the apps to talk to 5 or 10 people at once, you're probably going to suffer from a paradox of choice, meaning the more choice you're given, the less likely you are to make a choice and the more likely you are to not value that choice. If you focus on one person and spend some time getting to know them, have dates by Zoom and FaceTime, laugh, talk about your fears and your life and your family instead of just like, oh, what movies do you like to see or music, you know? Get into some real deep stuff. It might be a chance to really grow a deep emotional bond.
Wow. Okay. And Dr. Long, why are young people with coronavirus having blood clots and strokes?
So the answer to this question about why young people are seeing blood clots and strokes is something very unique to coronavirus. Usually we see blood clots and heart attacks and strokes in people who are older and they have high cholesterol and their blood vessels are thickened. What it seems to be with coronavirus is that we're even seeing these blood clots and strokes in people who aren't having severe other symptoms, the shortness of breath and other things. And it seems to be due to the inflammation reaction that's causing blockages in really big vessels. Those big vessels can be in the lungs or they can be in the brain and causing a stroke. So it's really important, again, that people of all age, 30s, 40s, and 50s, if you have shortness of breath, chest pain for clots in the lungs, or signs of a stroke, weakness, numbness, difficulty speaking, seek medical care. Don't delay.
All right. Stand by, everybody. We've got more questions from viewers coming your way. But first, these are tough times for families in particular. And one of our friends at Sesame Street, Elmo's dad, had a message for family, career, and even your legal rights. Your questions are being answered right now. Shan, this one comes from Danielle in New York. My lease expires at the end of the month, and while movers have been deemed an essential business here, my landlord is demanding another month of rent and an additional $1,000 to sterilize an apartment I haven't been in since March. Is any of this legal?
That sounds highly legal. Let me add that, landlord. Her lease is what controls here, and there's nothing in the lease that says the landlord can just unilaterally add on another month or add on some sort of bogus charge for cleaning. Usually in leases, there's a security deposit. It can be used for extremely unusual damage. Carpet got burned up or something like this. This notion that they can tack on some made-up charge for disinfectant, very questionable. And I would not go along with that. Tell them that you'll see them in court.
That's right. Okay, she's listening, I'm sure, and taking notes. All right, Dr. Long, Ann from Massachusetts writes, I heard about a mysterious skin condition called COVID toes. What is that? And does it mean you have coronavirus?
So this is a question I've been getting, this one and a lot of other questions on my Instagram account where I've been answering viewers' questions, and happy to take others there, because what COVID toes are is they're kind of an atypical presentation of coronavirus. And it's probably due, again, to inflammatory changes in those little tiny blood vessels we have in our toes and in our feet. Your feet get itchy. They may look kind of bruised. They may hurt. And it may be in young kids who don't have any other symptoms of coronavirus. Again, the big bottom line I want people to take away is there are many different presentations of coronavirus. There are those people with the shortness of breath and cough that we talk about in the fever. But in kids, it can present in funny ways, in rashes. It can present with GI, kind of nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. A lot of different ways that COVID can present. It's really important for all of us to know as we start to think about who's been exposed to it.
Oh my God. And now your toes too? I mean, I just can't keep up. This is just unbelievable and bizarre. All right, so Wendy, Catherine asking, what are divorced parents supposed to do if they are not in agreement about quarantining their kids?
Is that question for me or the lawyer?
For you, Wendy. I'm sorry.
Well, I think the answer is call a lawyer. No, the truth is you have to figure out what your rights are as far as your custody is concerned. And I do believe that the courts are allowing children to move between homes if the custody arrangement allows for that. The most important thing with kids always, whether your parents are together or divorced, is you try to maintain some unified front. Of course, the problem is if parents couldn't get along when they were together, they're less likely to get along when they're apart. But also that you create some degree of consistency so the kids know what's happening. And if somebody is violating the terms of a custody arrangement, then you might have to make a phone call to a lawyer.
Yeah. So Shan, what about if there is, if this is potentially a violation of an arrangement, or, the parents are not seeing eye to eye, even though they're no longer together, there may be something that says they have to agree on, the health and welfare of their kids?
Well, a good family relations attorney and divorce lawyer is always going to have the interests of the children first. And hopefully in a time of an emergency, a global emergency like this, parents are going to remember that and try to work together for the health of the children. Unfortunately, right now, even if you call your lawyer, at best, they'll call the other party's lawyer and they'll try and work out. Many of the courts right now are essentially closed. They're doing hearings remotely. It'll be very hard to get something on a docket right now. So really, if there's a big problem, absolutely call your lawyer. And of course, if there's a really serious problem with health really being endangered, you might have to consider calling the police. But hopefully, most people, like all of us, are going to try to work together right now.
Quickly, Dr. Long, 2 cats tested positive for coronavirus this week. Should pet owners be worried?
Fred, did Joe Exotic put you up to this question? I want to know. I think a lot of pet owners are asking this.
Cat's got my tongue.
We know that cats. Oh, there you go. Very nice. We know that cats can be a reservoir for coronavirus. Can it spread from a cat to a pet owner? We don't know that yet, but I thought the CDC put this really well. They said, treat your cats like you do any other member of your family. If you're isolating and quarantining and keeping them from contacting, other people, then your cats probably shouldn't be going on play dates either, to keep everybody safe.
All right. Thanks to all of you. So fantastic. So glad we can get through so many of those questions. Dr. Daria Long, Wendy Walsh, and Shan Wu. Appreciate it, and you all continue to be well. And of course, folks, you can continue to submit your questions to CNN.com. It will be answered at some point on the air here on CNN. And don't forget to join Bill Weir for a CNN special report on the devastation of climate change and how it's transforming life as we know it. The Road to Change, America's Climate Crisis, showcases his journeys to the Alaskan glaciers, the Florida Keys, and the struggling heartland.
This whole lake there was no lake in the early 1950s. So the ice went all the way down to Right, to the end of the lake.
End of the lake down there.
Right.
This is what is left of Alaska's Spencer Glacier. What took thousands of years of snow to grow has melted away in mere decades.
The ice that we're standing on is probably about 5,000 years old. Once this water melts off and goes into the ocean, as long as we have all this carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it's not coming back here.
And if you count Greenland and the polar caps, since 1961, Earth has lost the equivalent of a block of ice the size of the United States, 16 feet thick.
Wow, extraordinary. The CNN special report, The Road to Change, America's Climate Crisis, tonight at 10 p.m. Thank you so much for joining me.